Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me for some virtual vitamin Z as we bring the Detroit Zoo to you. My name is Claire. I'm a curator of education with the Detroit Zoological Society, where we are celebrating and saving wildlife. So today we're going to talk about a species of birds that the Detroit Zoological Society staff have a lot of expertise in caring for. So we're going to talk about flamingos. We have two different species of flamingos who live at the Detroit Zoo, both Chilean and greater flamingos. So today we're going to focus on the Chilean flamingos. They live in South America. So let's look at my globe. We're going to start up here in Michigan. We're going to travel right across the equator and we land in South America. So the Chilean flamingos live across most of the South American continent. And if we zoom in, you can actually see the Chilean flamingos here on my globe today. They're featured, which is kind of exciting. And the greater flamingos, who also live at the Detroit Zoo, they live over in Africa, and we'll talk about them another time. So today we're going to focus on South America and the Chilean flamingos. And to do this, I have one vocabulary word that we're going to need to cover, and that word is pigment. So we're going to talk about what pigment means and why it's so important in making a flamingo a flamingo. This is a Chilean flamingo, and you can see they're really well known for their coloration. So that pink, bright orange, reddish colors all mixed together. And they get that from what they eat. They eat algae, and they also eat crustaceans, which are little shelled critters. But the crustaceans also eat the algae. So really that coloration is coming from the algae and the pigments or coloration that's in that plant. So the algae contains something called beta-carotene, and it turns their feathers pink through the digestive process. If they didn't eat that beta-carotene or that diet rich in it, they would be kind of a whitish gray color, similar to the color they are when they're born. And I'll show you a picture of a young flamingo chick here pretty soon. So we'll talk a little bit more about pigment in a bit, but I wanted to let you know where they get that amazing coloration that they're known for. Besides being those awesome colors, they have a couple other really important adaptations. Long legs, which are important because they wade out into shallow waters to eat those algae and the crustaceans, so big kind of muddy brackish ponds. They also have, they can stand on one leg for a long period of time, which helps them rest, so they can kind of switch back and forth. So if one leg gets tired, they can put out the other leg and just rest. They're about 3 feet tall, the Chilean flamingos are, but they only weigh about 5 to 6 pounds. And that's really important because Chilean flamingos do indeed fly. And they'll fly from different breeding grounds or to different areas. So if one area that they're living in starts to run out of food, they can just fly to the next pond and look for more algae and crustaceans there. So a group of flamingos is called a flamboyance. And the fact that they live together in these big groups is another adaptation. It's a behavioral adaptation that they have for protection from predators. If there's a whole bunch together and a predator starts to come, they can do all these different alarm calls and let everybody know that, hey, there's trouble coming, and then start to take shelter and hide. So I promised you a picture of a young flamingo, and I will not disappoint. Back in August of 2018, 5 flamingos hatched at the Detroit Zoo. 4 of them were the greater flamingos, and 1 was a Chilean flamingo. Whenever possible, we always try to keep the flamingos and any other animal that's born with their parents, because parental care is almost always best. But if something comes up and the animal care staff feel that it's necessary, they will pull an animal from the parents to provide him or her the care that they need to survive and thrive. And this was the case for Mr. Meyer. So Mr. Meyer was born back in August of 2018. It became apparent pretty quickly that he was going to need a little extra support. He was having some leg muscle issues. He wasn't walking around and moving like he was supposed to, so the animal care staff stepped in. So they brought him back into our care, and they realized that he probably needed a little hydrotherapy. So hydrotherapy is something that people use too. If there's muscle issues and they need to build up muscles, if you put someone in a pool and have them walk around, they can build up those muscles in a low impact way. So it's not injuring anything further, but it's just building them up. So they found a little pool, and Mr. Meyer had regular hydrotherapy sessions where he could walk around, again, build up those leg muscles, and practice that walking without being out on the ground, which I thought was a pretty ingenious way. I have to say our animal care team is incredible. They stop at nothing to ensure that every single animal receives the care that he or she needs, not just to survive, but to also thrive. So as Mr. Meyer got older, they started walking him around. And if you remember, he was born back in August of 2018. So here in Michigan, it starts to get chilly as early as October. So we spent a lot of time walking around indoors to help build those leg muscles. Over here on this side, you can see a little bit of tape on Mr. Meyer's leg. This is the same type of tape that athletes use. They wrap it around and it helps them have full movement while they heal and strengthen the muscles without restricting where he can go. So they actually use the technique that athletes use to help him build and continue to build those leg muscles. This is a little tidbit that's kind of fun to share. He really likes running water. So this is him playing in the drainage of his hydrotherapy pool. You can see as he's gotten big, his hydrotherapy pool has gotten much larger. And as they're releasing the water out and draining it out, here he is standing in the water, letting it run over his beak and letting it run over his feet, and just really enjoying the opportunity to have that water flow past him, which I thought was a really neat tidbit to share with all of you. So here he is, he's getting bigger now. He's learning how to be a flamingo. He's getting ready to be reintroduced back into the flock, or the flamboyance, with the rest of the flamingos. Take a note of his color. You can see that it's gray and white because again, he hasn't been eating that algae that has that beta carotene in. It's not an essential part of their diet. It does provide that coloration, and he will start eating that and his coloration will start to change. So here he is. Not only is he like running water, but he also likes taking selfies apparently. So even though he was the smallest in the flock when he was reintroduced, for a period of time he was the most dominant, which meant he was in charge. That whole rearing process took from August of 2018 when he was hatched to February of 2019. That's 7 months that our bird care team spent making sure that Mr. Meyer was cared for around the clock, which is incredible. What a testimony to the incredibly dedicated folks at the Detroit Zoo. So you might be wondering, well, how did he get his name Mr. Meyer? And I got permission to share this story with you. Bonnie, who's our associate curator of birds, her dad unfortunately passed away shortly after Mr. Meyer was born. And they decided to name Mr. Meyer after Bonnie's dad, which I thought was really touching. And he really is a testament to how much we care for each individual animal to, again, make sure that they're not just surviving, but thriving. So now that you've met Mr. Meyer and learned a little bit about Chilean flamingos, I want to go back to that pigmentation. So we eat a lot of foods that have beta carotene in them, that same coloration that's in that algae that gives flamingos their bright reddish, orangish, pinkish color. So that pigmentation lives within the plants. And we're going to do a short activity to kind of see what different colors and pigmentations there are in different plants. And to do it, you only need a few supplies, and I listed them out here for you. You're going to need a solid surface, some cardboard or some newspaper. I ended up using a grocery bag, like a brown paper grocery bag. You're gonna need some flowers or leaves, and if you don't have access to flowers or leaves, you could also use something like an orange peel or a slice of carrot or a slice of squash, anything, fruits, vegetables that you might have in the kitchen. You're gonna need a hammer or a rubber mallet and a piece of white fabric or paper. And what you're going to do is you're going to lay out all the things that you find. I went out into my yard and I found a few things, a few leaves, the dandelions, the violets. I picked a couple pansies that I planted and a couple other flowers. And I was walking around, I wondered, so these leaves are green, so I imagine if I squished them up, they might have green juices or pigments that come out of them. But these ones were purple and I wasn't so sure. And I wanted to explore and see which ones were going to release what different colors of pigments. So I laid them all out, I put a piece of paper on top, and then I got out my rubber mallet because my eye-hand coordination isn't as good maybe as some other people's, and I thought if I accidentally bumped my finger that the rubber mallet might be more gentle on me. And I started squishing up all of those different things, all those different plants and flowers and leaves on my paper. It turns out this is a pretty good stress relief. You might try taping down your paper though, so you don't have to worry about accidentally bumping your finger or your hand while you're doing this. And as I was doing this, it became apparent that some of the leaves and flowers released their pigmentation pretty quickly, and it started to bleed through the paper, and you can kind of see it here on the paper, whereas others were a little bit trickier to get that pigmentation or that coloration out of. So I'm actually going to go and try to hit this leaf a little bit more and see if I can't get some of the pigmentation out of it. I don't get a whole lot out of that maple leaf, but that's okay. And now when I'm done, I'm going to pick up this piece of paper, and you can see that a bunch of the flowers actually stuck to the paper, so I had to peel them off. A couple flowers escaped down here. They didn't get squished very much at all. This leaf didn't release any pigmentation. It was kind of a thick waxy leaf, so that in itself was kind of a neat exploration into texture. But this is what I ended up with. The pansy transferred almost entirely, as did this violet. You can see the dandelion almost completely intact up here, and then a little bit of a smoosh over here in my columbine. Then I looked down at my paper bag, and I thought, that is a really cool leaf print. That leaf was purple, yet the inside of the leaf was green, and only the purple pigmentation is on the outside. And I thought that's worth exploring a little bit more. So I went back out, I got a piece of cardstock, 2 more of those purple leaves. I put my white paper back on top of it, got my rubber mallet back out, got in a little bit more stress relief time here as I pounded down onto the leaves, and you can see some of the pigmentation is starting to show up through the paper. And you know how this is going to end. So let's skip over to what it looks like. Again, here's the purple pigmentation out of the outside and the green in the middle. And then I remembered, well, plants have this really cool process called photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is how they capture energy from the sun and translate it into the sugars that they need to grow, which we in then turn ingest that energy when we eat plants or things that eat plants. So all that energy is coming from the sun, going through that process of photosynthesis, which needs chlorophyll, which has a green pigmentation to it. So all plants have that chlorophyll in it, and sometimes it's just hiding underneath another pigment, but when we squished it up, we sure saw that green coloration come out. So by doing this activity, not only do you end up with a really cool card that you could give to someone, and I tried out all those different types of flowers to see which one was going to transfer over best first, but you're also practicing your fine motor skills, you're practicing your eye-hand coordination. Hopefully your eye-hand coordination is good enough that you don't have to practice your first aid skills. And you're also learning a little bit about the different pigmentations that are in plants that some animals, like the flamingo, their bodies process it in a way that it actually colors their feathers and their body covering, which is pretty amazing. So today we covered Chilean flamingos and their flamboyance at the Detroit Zoo. We got a sneak peek into Mr. Meyer's start and the incredibly dedicated team that helped him thrive in the flock at the Detroit Zoo. And I left you with an activity that you can try out on your own. So thanks for joining me today. If you're looking for more virtual vitamin Z, check out our website, detroitzoo.org. We have a whole bunch of activities there, more videos like this one, live cameras that go into the animal habitats, so lots for you to do and explore. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you again soon next time.